Hey everyone, welcome back to Walker Family Works. I'm Will, and today we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to talk through some of the points of getting a brisket trimmed up and get it smoked and get it out for a party that we're having tomorrow. So I have a 17-pound USDA prime brisket here, and I'm going to go through some of the pitfalls that backyard smokers or backyard pitmasters have issues with and challenges with. So, all right, we're going to get it opened up, and then we'll get to trimming it and getting it in season and getting ready to go. All right, so the majority of the issues that come along with backyard pitmasters is either there's really two things in two categories. They either don't trim enough or they cut it incorrectly. So I don't know if you can tell in the video, but you can see how the grain in the meat goes down to the point here. And I get it from brisket anatomy. This is the point, but to the point of the flap. So that's where a lot of it comes along to. They don't trim off this or remove this heavy fat that won't render, which causes it to have issues through the process. So basically on the top here, all you really want to do is just kind of make sure that it's nice and uniform and there's no like crazy, obviously this gristle on the side will be cut off, this heavy fat cap will be cut off, and then you'll kind of round down the smallest point here, because a lot of this meat it'll get too tough through the cook process. So, and I want to keep down as much and get off as much of this top cap as possible. So just kind of work it through and get it all off as best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect because a lot of the soft fat down here will render off and it'll just go into the juices of the brisket. The main point on the brisket here is this heavy fat block that you see, and on a lot of that needs to be trimmed out. Now, one of the reasons why your backyard smokers and pitmasters is they spend good money on a brisket and then they realize that you're trimming a tremendous amount of the fat off. So like that's just an example. It's about 1 inch thick and it's all fat. Now through the process that you can use is you can use this and cook it and make beef tallow to use in your next brisket. But since the purposes of this brisket itself, we're just gonna get it all off, and honestly, it goes away as waste because we don't need beef tallow for the way that we're doing this one. So, yeah, I'm just going to kind of trim this down, get a lot of this thicker fat off, and really don't be afraid to dig in because this cap is rather thick. As you can see, I've probably already gone in almost inch and a half already, and it's still down in just fat. So it's clear that during the smoke process, this wouldn't render out at any capacity. So you see how thick that cap is, and that doesn't make anything enjoyment for anyone. Now you see you start to get back down to the meat down here. So we'll just kind of line that up, make sure there's no really impurities in it, and try to level this out. So that's what we're going to do right now. And I like to use a little bit of a flexible knife, not too flexible during this process. Like you can see there's a little flex to this knife, but not a whole lot. So that'll really be good for that phase. Now for this gristle on the side, we'll just kind of trim it up because again, that's not going to be enjoyable for anyone to eat. So just kind of line that up. And then if there's any sort of thin stuff that's left, like this right here, just zip that off and then just kind of align. Make it nice and uniform during the smoker, because if there's any like resistance to it, it'll change the airflow of the smoke over. I'm actually just gonna, for all intents and purposes, since it's mostly fat anyways, just cut that right down. Like you see how much fat is in that. And then align it right up. And then on the butt, proverbial butt here, it's the same thing. Just kind of trim off that gristle. That's not enjoyable from a presentation standpoint in any capacity. This right down here where I'm at is where, if you've ever had brisket tip, that's where it comes from. Okay, so there's another little hard line of fat right in here, so I'm just gonna whittle that down just a little bit. Try to get it out. So that general rule of thumb is if it's hard fat, it won't render. If it's soft fat, like this here on top, that'll all render out. Take a little bit more of that fat out. All right, that'll be pretty good for the back there. It's usually a relatively quick cleanup, and from there, flip it over, and that back cap. We're going to want to bring this down to about a quarter of an inch. A lot of it's very soft fat, but still you want to bring it down to about a quarter of an inch, and that can just be done by kind of doing the same process you did on the other side. And just whittling it down until you start to see that little pink right there. So that way you know where you're at. And kind of hold that through all the way through. So we're going to give you a good idea of how much I trim off during this process. Obviously, again, this is a 17-pound brisket. And honestly, one of the little heavier, fatty ones that I've seen and getting recently. So unsure why that is, but each cow grows differently. You know, you've done it a couple times, you can kind of feel the harder spots in it, and then be able to kind of look and see that, like, that edge right there still has quite a bit of fat in it. So we'll continue trimming down right there. Again, there's that pinker spot from the color of the meat. And this is why I like that flexible knife, because you can just kind of jig it in there and roll with it forward and kind of get that. Now, if you can see it in the camera, you can see how thin this is getting down here, and that's not going to cook well. So what I like to do is I'll just kind of round it out to allow that thicker. And just do a little rounding job right there, and then finish it up on the back side. Okay, so in here is, again, another fat cap. So we're just gonna, and a lot of these fat caps that I'm cutting off are very normal when it comes to briskets. They're not outside of scope of normality, so be expected to this if you're trimming up a brisket. Yeah, and you want that nice uniformity to avoid any wind resistance or anything as it cooks. It'll cook odd. All right, so a little bit of hardness still in here. And then, yeah. Okay, so now moving up to the point side, this back here, you can see that's a whole tremendous heap of fat. Just kind of dice that right off, and then just kind of trim towards the edge. Now, a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll cut this sort of odd growth muscle right here, the kind of the connecting tissue right out, because it's a lot of fat. But what I found that I like to do is I'll like trim down one side and then right back out. And you'll see how it'll expose that meat right there. And then through the warming process of it sitting on the smoker, you actually put a little bit of downward pressure on it, it'll even right out. It's just one of the things that I found. And again, a lot of this is just going through and trial by error and going from there. There we go. All right, so before we season this up, when I got the grains of the meats exposed, I just want to talk about quickly through the post-smoke cutting, since I won't be able to include that in this video, as I'm going to carve this brisket over at my buddy's house. So as I was mentioning previously, the grains in the meat, like as you can see, it goes down here. So you want to start your cutting process cutting against those grains. You start down here at the tip. You'll start off with nice little clean slices, and you'll work back up through. Now, once you get to about the halfway point in the brisket, right here where the point and the flap kind of meet, and you can kind of see the difference in musculature in here a little bit, and how they join right in here where this fat block is. So what I like to do is I like to cut through this. Probably it'll end up being about in here. And then the point of the brisket, you actually cut vertically. So you'll cut here and then cut long slices through. And that'll really break up that grain in the muscle and make it really nice and tender. And that's where a lot of people fail. To me, like people who've done it, and I've heard it from countless people who've done briskets. They've been like, how do you get your brisket so tender? Well, the two pitfalls is cutting off fat and cutting against the grain. So if you kind of take that from there on, brisket is a very forgiving meat. You can do any number of things to it. Living my life down in Texas for about 6 years, simple is better down there. They like to do basically salt and pepper only. Me and my family and my friends apparently have a palate for garlic, so that's what we use. We do a garlic heavy. We do garlic powder, onion powder, and then some various other brisket seasonings. So with the conclusion of the trimming process, now we're going to move on from there over and get it seasoned up. We like to use mustard as a binder here because through the cook process, you don't taste any of the mustard at all. And it's a really good binder and brings out a lot of tenderness to the surface area of the meat. Okay, so for everyone's awareness, I just cut off 3 pounds and 14 ounces of fat off a brisket with a little extra of points, but for all intents and purposes, 3 pounds, 14 ounces. So this was a 17-pound brisket, and now essentially it's a 14-pound brisket. 13 and a half, 13 3/4, somewhere in that regard. I'm not looking exactly, it was probably 17 and a half pounds. But needless to say, now we're back to a much more workable product. All right, everyone. So now that we're past the trimming portion of this, we're moving on to seasonings. So because we're dealing with mustard, get our nice rubber gloves on so that our hands don't smell like mustard for the next year and a half. So we're just going to give it a good bath of mustard, and then we'll start with our seasonings from there. So I have the seasoning expert who does all the seasonings for all the smoked meats in this house, except for ribs. I did those the one time, and I don't know if it turned out good or bad, and that's still yet to be determined. But let's get started with the mustard. At this point, I'm just the guy with gloves on. Okay, first up we have garlic powder. Or granulated garlic, whichever one you want to call it. Next one's granulated onion. Bourbon brick. Texas brisket rub, just one of the ones we found here locally. Mostly a salt and pepper, little paprika mix. Yeah.
More garlic.
Garlic needs a side of garlic. How I live my life.
Multiple.
Now again, this isn't the has all be all brisket recipes. This is just how I do it, and I haven't had a complaint. We're moving on to pork barrel barbecue. It's an all-purpose seasoning rub. Got a bunch of stuff. What we use. Figure out the second motto in this house is we shop at Costco. Everything comes in large sizes. This is from our hometown. This is Mark's Barbecue. He's a good guy back in our hometown where me and my better half grew up. He has some good stuff. Does a lot of good things for the community. So what we do. Again, you can see how light it is. There's a lot of salt in that. And pepper. Kinder's wood-fired garlic, another random Costco find that we have. McCormick, because I work in Hunt Valley, Maryland, and they have good seasonings, and we have what we call Old Bay Day down there because you can clearly tell when they're making Old Bay seasoning. Fantastic. And Tony Catchers or Zatarain's cayenne. Because everything needs a little bit of heat. There we go. And at that point, just a little press in to seal all the seasonings against the meat. So this is a little trade secret my wife figured out. Is you can pick it up and then you make kind of a stretch wrap, little bottom to nice wrap it up that we're going to do here. And then I'll flip it over and drop it right on it, and then you can just season it, and at that point it's just wrap until we're all done. So she's going to make a nice little season packet here for the brisket to go in. All right, and this is all right. I will see you guys again in about 6 hours when I fire up the smoker. So that's what I recommend. I recommend leaving it in the fridge with the seasonings on to kind of let it soak into that meat a little bit for about 6 hours at least. If you can do longer, you can do longer. we don't get the chance. We got 2 kids. They keep us busy. So, catch you in the morning. All right, good morning. It's really early in the morning, and we are getting the brisket ready to go in the smoker. Smoker has already come up 225 degrees, and the brisket I brought out as soon as I came out before I even started firing it up, so that way I can bring it up to as close to room temperature as we can. So yeah, get it out and get it on the smoker. Okay, we got our brisket out at our Green Mountain Grill pellet smoker. It's already up to 225. We're all good to go. So the only other thing that I'll actually discuss real quick, and this is just a personal preference for me, I like to cook mine fat side down to give a little protective layer on that thinner meat, and let the heat hit the fat directly, and then it's more of an indirect heat on the rest of the brisket meat. So that's what we're going to do. The carving process last night. I am well aware with which side of this brisket is the top and the fat side. So the other thing that I do is, since this is a pellet smoker, I put the point directly over the firebox, just because the point can take a lot more heat than the flat can. So the firebox is here in the middle. Rotate this around. Put it on like that. And now comes the waiting around part. In this case, I gotta get out and do about 1,500 other jobs, so catch you in a few hours. All right, everyone, it's a few hours later. It's been on for almost 4.5 hours now. Why is my squirt bottle not working? So you can see how that bark is developed. It's looking real good. Just want to give it a good solid spritz. I use a apple cider and Worcestershire sauce combination. It really helps to see a lot of that fat's rendering off and some of the nice sizzling. And how does that look? Looks like we're getting to be appetizing. Well, here in about another half hour or so, I'm going to put some probes in it, and then we'll talk about the temperatures. All right, everyone. We are about at the 6-hour mark. So I put one of these probes in. See where we're at. I'm going to put one down here in the flat, since it's the part that cooks fastest. Kind of try to see where we're at here. Won't be able to see. Got ahead of myself. And by the way, I have been spritzing this about every half hour. Just haven't been showing you folks every single time. So, looking good. All right, so we got a little bit ahead of the camera here. But what we're doing right now is we're past the stall. It's at 163. So we're about to wrap it in tin foil, and this is kind of, some people consider the cheater method, because it'll accelerate the smoke, which is fine, based off of the time that we have right now. So I have my 2 probes in here, one in the tip and one in the point. I'm sorry, one in the flat and one in the point. And we're going to do a wrap. We're going to put in the apple cider and Worcestershire sauce mix, as well as some beef stock, just to ensure it keeps cooking. So that's what we're doing now. Pro tip, clean the grill grates so you don't punch a hole in the tinfoil. Okay, so we have a little opening here at the end, and what we'll do, give a good shake to our apple juice and Worcestershire sauce mix, and kind of dump it in there. I kind of try to go about like a cup of this, about maybe 2 cups of beef stock. can use broth or beef stock. It doesn't matter. It's just whichever is your preference. So then kind of get about 2 cups of that in there. And then seal her on up. And back in the smoker. So now that we got the brisket wrapped up and back in the smoker, we're gonna let it ride until it gets up to 203. From there, pull it off, wrap it in a towel, put it in a cooler, and let it rest until we get over to the party. I don't recommend letting it rest much more than 4 hours like that, although you could probably go to the 5 or 6 mark. It's just make sure that it doesn't get too cool in the process, because it'll get it more tough to eat in that process. Keep it nice and warm. So if you like videos like this, it's that season to where we got various other recipes that are coming. My wife's brine recipe for turkey for Thanksgiving, maybe a prime rib for Christmas, probably some multiple pork butts that we're working on through the process. I do have two racks of ribs downstairs that I was trying to do here in the next couple weeks. So if you like these videos, please let me know. Again, I'm Will, and this is Wolcott Family Works.